Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. At the Monroe County Commissioner meeting on February 23rd, journalist Dave Askins asked about the construction at early voting sites and if everything will be finalized before early voting begins in April. Facility manager Greg Crone said that he believes it will be.
We definitely recognize that time is of the essence with this project, but the work that is required in order to use that as an early voting site, we're working our best to have that work completed by the end of March, well ahead of the April 5th voting, which would allow elections to get in there and set up the way they'd like to. So we're looking, like I said, for the last week of March to complete work. No work will be going on during election periods.
The commissioners heard from the Assistant Director of the Planning Department, Jackie Nestor-Jelen, about a scrap metal processing facility that would require a zoning ordinance change.
The purpose of this amendment is to add a new use called scrap metal processing facility. And this use would only be permitted in the heavy industrial zone under our zoning map. This amendment includes a definition that is aligned with the Indiana state statute and also places standards for the permitted use, which includes the following. The facility is accessed and served by a road infrastructure sufficient to safely transport scrap metal by truck bed, trailer, or semi-trailer, and is sufficiently buffered by natural objects, plantings, fences, or other appropriate means, so it is substantially screened from main traveled way of the system. The outdoor storage area shall be limited to 100,000 square feet or less and be located in an area that complies with the buildable area provision in Chapter 804-4E. The need for this text amendment is due to the fact that scrap metal recycling is not considered solid waste by the Indiana Department of Environmental Management or the Solid Waste District, and therefore there is a gap currently in our zoning ordinance.
She said the facility would process reused iron, steel, or non-ferrous metal. Nestor-Jelen shared that the Plan Commission recommended the approval of the Ordinance 720. Commissioner Penny Githens asked whether the ordinance allowed for melting appliances like refrigerators and freezers that have Freon in them. She explained that she is concerned about chemicals going into the groundwater and recommended a concrete pad to contain any spills. Nestor-Jelen said that the commissioners can add amendments to the ordinance and get them approved by the Plan Commission.
This list does not exclude appliances, so that would be something that if you would like to see added to the definition, we would be able to do so, and then it would go back to the Plan Commission. I could see under the Indiana Code if there is sort of an umbrella definition that might cover appliance exclusion, but if not, we might just have to rework it a little bit if that is what you would prefer to do.
Commissioner Julie Thomas said that she would not approve of the ordinance unless more parameters were put into place.
This is a general change to our ordinance that would impact anybody who wants to do this kind of work in heavy industrial. And I recognize that. However, this amendment is being offered as a result of a specific petitioner wanting to provide this service. And I find it really, it's just not limited enough for my taste. I am concerned because we have had events in county's history where fluids, oils, PCBs have leached into our groundwater and into our environment, and I don't want this to happen again. One of the things that I know this particular petitioner has been involved in is, I believe that they also process ordinance from Crane, and I would want some very specific things here about containment of fluids or exclusion, as Commissioner Githens pointed out, an actual exclusion for anything containing Freon or any motor vehicles or anything with a battery. I mean, it really would be pretty exclusionary for me to be comfortable with this.
During public comment, Monroe County resident Mark Cranley spoke in opposition of the facility.
I'm actually the attorney for Republic Services, which is right next door to the site, and we oppose the site. We have opposed it at the Plan Commission. I'm not going to make all the points we have regarding this project because we're specifically talking about the change in the use. There is a wetland feature on this surface. It is upgrading from bodies of water. It's near the wastewater, the water treatment facility. It's less than 1,700 feet from residential housing. There's several very significant problems. But what I really want to address is the proposal that this is not solid waste that's being brought in. It absolutely is. Under the definition of solid waste under Indiana's IDEMS regulations and Indiana statutes that define solid waste. Solid waste is essentially anything that's being brought onto a site that's garbage or waste material or discarded material. So they're proposing to have people come in and bring appliances, anything that has metal in it, drop it off. And they're trying to get around the definition, saying, well, we're going to pay for this stuff. But you can use your imagination to think about the things people are going to want to dump here that have absolutely no value. It was described in the Planning Commission meetings as a transfer station that would operate like a waste transfer station. That's obviously a lot different than what's been presented to you. Something that's of great concern to anyone living in this area. They've also indicated that they want the heavy industrial characterization, and they may or may not actually do this. They may actually put a manufacturing.
Commissioner Julie Thomas suggested they revisit the ordinance at the next meeting on March 9th. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying.
I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm at risk of regretting what I do, just to join the crowd.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell. And you would never know it by looking at me.
But with Girls Inc. in my corner,
There for me, every day, believing in me.
Showing me what's possible.
I can be strong enough to respect myself and my body.
to say I can rather than I can't,
To say no with no apology.
To be a leader.
to finish school.
To own my future.
To break the cycle.
Girls Inc. believes every girl can succeed. That's why the trained professionals of Girls Inc. are there for our girls every day, supporting, mentoring, and guiding them in a safe, girls-only environment. Building bonds that last for years and change that lasts a lifetime. Girls Inc. gives girls the tools they need to boldly face challenges, to resist peer pressure, to be the first in their families to go to college, to beat the odds. With Girls Inc. in her corner, every girl can be healthy, confident, and resilient. She'll do more than dream about her potential. She'll reach it.
With you in my corner. With you in my corner,
I will not be another statistic.
I will fight for myself.
For my future.
With you in my corner, I will win.
Fuel her fire and she will change the world. Girls Inc., inspiring all girls to be strong, smart, and bold.
Welcome back to CATSweek. At the Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners meeting on February 22nd, city landscaper Joanna Sparks presented a contract with Ecologic for vegetation management at Switchyard Park.
This contract is for management of over 19.7 acres of reforestation, mostly in riparian zones. It includes maintenance of native plants and trees that have been installed during the construction process, as well as extensive ongoing invasive plant management. This will be the 5th year that of consistent management at the Switchyard. So we're seeing some really wonderful improvements, and the native plantings are really starting to take hold, and we're eager to, I am especially eager to see how a lot of the forbs, the flowers and the native grasses do this year. They should be big enough that we ought to have a really nice show in some of those more open areas, hopefully around the wetland basin. So this contract is not to exceed the amount of $32,650, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
President of the board, Kathleen Mills, asked if the management of invasive plants is an ongoing task that could presumably go on forever or one that has an end date. Sparks replied, saying that the invasive species removal is an indefinite task, but that the amount of maintenance needed should decrease after the native plants are more established.
In a utopian society, yes, we would never have to manage invasive species. We would come in a couple times and that would be it. But unfortunately, just the magnitude of the presence of invasive plant species throughout our community, the seed bank keeps being replenished. So to say, the birds coming to utilize the wonderful habitat at Switchyard bring along unwanted non-native seeds. So we do hope that within a few years that we should be able to manage it in-house, but with the construction and all the disruption, lots and lots of seeds have been allowed to have been disturbed, thus they're germinating, and so we seem to as part of the construction process, we hit sort of a critical mass level of seed germination of invasives. So it is highly likely that year 3 to 5 in management, the invasive numbers start to go down. We are thankfully shifting the focus, not so much from woody invasives like Asian bush honeysuckle and tree of heaven into more annual and biennial and perennial forbs and grasses. Japanese steelgrass is a big one. That's sort of an ongoing thing. There's some non-native invasive seeds can last in the soil for decades. So it will constantly be monitoring, but the goal is that our management time is dramatically reduced.
The board approved the contract with Ecologic unanimously. The board also approved a contract with Davie Resource Group for the Bicentennial Bond Tree Project. Urban forester Aaron Hatch presented the contract to the board.
This contract is again for planting of trees along with 2 additional site visits. One for kind of checking on survivorship and adjusting of hardware, and one for pruning, and for up to 304 trees. This went through an RFP process, and we had 2 bidders on this, and Davie was the winning bid. This would be for the 304 trees, a contract not to exceed $182,096, funded from the Bicentennial Bond Series C. And I believe that is about $599 and some change per tree.
On February 22nd, at the Monroe County Community School Corporation Board meeting, some parents spoke out against the corporation's COVID mask mandate. The school corporation had originally decided to make masks optional 30 days after March 4th, when Monroe County's mask mandate is set to expire. Parents made public comments against the additional 30-day period and asked the board to lift the school's mask mandate when the county does. Concerned parent Grant Hurd said enforcing the masks beyond the March 4th deadline does not make sense.
I'm Grant Hurd. I'm here about the optional mask. I came in here, it's my first time here, and I look on your wall and you have engage and educate. And I'm in a profession where I have to engage with people all the time. If you don't see people's face, you can't truly engage. So our kids are not getting engaged with their teachers. They're not, so they're not learning. And to sit there and say a 30-day optional period, and you might have your mind made up. I see some of your faces already, like y'all aren't listening, and that's fine, and that's okay. But I'm a concerned parent, and I know some of you guys have kids. If you go to the playgrounds, guess what these kids are doing after school? They have no mask on. So what common sense does it make to make them sit there for 8 hours a day in a mask on? As soon as they leave your building, they're not wearing a mask. And so I just don't understand it. You're asking your teacher to do something they can't do with masks. They cannot engage with these kids. And until that happens, our educational program is going to be crushed. My kid is losing opportunities to learn every day. And so this 30 days extra, if these kids that need masks, if they haven't been doing it for the last 2 years, what have they been doing? That makes no sense. They've had 2 years to they're going to school, so wherever they're wearing now should be working for them. And so therefore, what do you need another 30 days? Like, I will say this, COVID has made us lose common sense. Like this common sense. And so we just want you to put common sense back into the school board. That's it. Like, just use common sense. If these kids have been in school for 2 years wearing whatever they've been wearing, it must have been good enough. So what do you need another 30 days for? It's not going to fix the issue. There is no other mask. My kid goes to school with a t-shirt on her face. You think this is stopping anything? If it did, the hospitals would be wearing it and they would save millions of dollars. So let's just have some common sense. So our kids can learn. That's all I ask for, because this is getting really ridiculous. Like, ridiculous. And y'all, like I said, I know you're probably not listening. Y'all just like, I already have your mind made up, and that's fine. But I just want you to know how I feel and all these other parents feel. And the fact to sit there and say, and for the fact to sit there and say one person has to come speak on one subject, to send one person. Well, no. Because they've been doing that and y'all haven't been listening. So let all these people come speak and tell you how they feel. So if you're not going to do that, take that off your wall. Because you can't do that until you do that. So if you're not going to do it, take it off.
Ms. Kirby, another parent, said that the school board was enforcing the mask mandate because they were afraid of COVID-19 themselves, not on behalf of the students' well-being.
I would like to start off by reading the definition of fear. Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the benefit that someone or something is dangerous or likely to cause pain. Let me tell you, the students of MCCSC should not be feared, and they should be respected for adhering to your fearful policies for 2 years. This board has made decisions based on fear. You have disregarded what experts, facts, doctors, and staff have suggested because of your personal fear of the virus. I have watched the room be cleared for 15 minutes because you felt unsafe. I didn't feel unsafe that day. You have worn 2 masks because of your fear, and now you are wanting to punish the students and staff because of your fear. The students had to adjust for 2 years. I think it's time for you to bend a little. You were chosen to make decisions based on facts, not personal feelings, and certainly not feelings of fear. I am asking you tonight to put your fear to the side and make your decision based on facts. Put your emotions aside and listen to the evidence. The pandemic is over. All the counties around us have moved on. Are you willing to lose more MCCSC students because you are too scared to live without a mask? We all know how much money was lost when you were too scared to open. I would like to point out the hypocrisy of your fear-driven policies. A student can go to a basketball game in your building without a mask on, but then get kicked out of class the same day for not wearing a mask. So does COVID only exist during school hours? If masks were so important, then why isn't it enforced during the extracurricular activities? Are you directly disobeying the mask mandate of Monroe County? It doesn't seem to bother you for sports. Why can't the kids take it off then too?
Another mother said that her son asked her to speak at the school board meeting about the extra 30 days.
My name is Hallie, and I have a son. Actually, the reason I'm here tonight, my first night actually ever missing him to a sports event. He's actually wrestling for the county meet at Jackson Creek right now, where they're all unmasked, wrestling around, rolling with each other on the ground, literally sweating at each other. Like, I hate to admit this, but my son literally said he tasted some kid's armpit last week. Like, they can do that, but yet they can't sit in desks at school all day without their masks. He asked me to come here tonight, and he asked me to speak because people aren't listening to them. They're not being heard. You know, when I saw your recommendation come out, Dr. Oswald, I thought, great, their minds are made up. I've heard your minds are made up, but I'm really hoping your guys' minds are not made up. It makes no sense for us to go another 30 days, none. We've gone to, just in the last 2 weeks, we've gone to Bedford and Indian Creek to wrestle. No mask mandates there. We're in there with all those kids with no masks. He does year-round sports. He's been with all these kids with no masks. So why in school, when they're having no contact, sitting in their desks learning, do they have to wear these masks? It makes no sense to me. And I really hope you guys have not got your minds made up and that you will consider unmasking our kids, because 30 more days it makes no sense. There's no point in 30 more days. Let's do it now. Let's do it on March 4th.
The board debated on when to lift the mask mandate with votes split 4-3, but decided to make masks optional starting on March 4th. According to an MCCSC COVID-19 update, masks will still be required on buses, but students will no longer have to quarantine if they are exposed to someone with COVID-19. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Bloomington Redevelopment Commission discussed the development of the IU Health Legacy Hospital site at the February 21st meeting. Project manager Deb Kuntz gave an update on the site's redevelopment.
So I think it's been some time since there's been an update on the hospital site redevelopment.
So we thought we would just go back just for a little bit and talk through the sort of just an overview of the redevelopment. I know there's probably different updates that happen throughout the year. There's obviously been a big focus on the Phase 1 East, which was always our plan, and a little bit on the core building, or focus on the core building as well, but the core building update will come in the future. We're not quite ready for that. And then ultimately just summarize the project review update that is in front of you. So I included in here just a recap of the master plan in terms of what the future development really looks like in terms of mid-rise, low-rise, single family dwellings, what that sort of future state really looks like, because I think that's important to always keep the future in mind, especially as you're building new infrastructure at the beginning. Sometimes it's kind of hard to swallow, making that kind of investment. But what this does is really get you to your goal and your emphasis to improve the affordable housing and give other housing opportunities, in particular, and other retail opportunities here in this redevelopment area.
The redevelopment process is ongoing. The Commission agreed to discuss more updates in the future. Their next meeting will be held on March 7th. The Monroe County Personnel Administration Committee met briefly on February 21st to discuss how the committee will proceed when meetings return in person. Council Administrator Kim Schell explained what the guidelines are for when the meetings resume in the building.
As we anticipate moving forward with in-person meetings, the PAC group needs to approve electronic attendance, and this allows members to attend electronically, but a quorum has to be present in person. But this also allows staff members to attend virtually as well as the public. So this is just in anticipation of what's ahead in March.
Councilmember Marty Hawk stated her preference for the committee meetings to be held at noon while staff members are already at work.
Yes, I would like to suggest that since we plan to meet at noon when our staff should already be in the building, that we make it clear that the staff needs to be there, as well as any department head that wants to make a presentation for a request. I understand that there are some members of the PAC that might have to be traveling from time to time. And if they would like to be virtually, if we're allowed to do that, that would be my preference, as well as the public could listen in. I'm not so certain that we are required to accept public comment from those that are not in attendance, but that would be up to the majority of however you want to do this. But I would like for us to continue to do it at noon and be able to take care of county business without doing overtime for our staff.
The committee approved the electronic attendance policy for public meetings. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.